everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk to you about a career journal or a professional journal that you keep for yourself, and it has only to do with your job and your career. I generally don't make videos like this, but it's helped me so much to have this for myself. And I'm gonna go through mine a little bit and give you some examples. I am not, affiliated with HR or anything like that, but I have sat in through interviews before. I've helped many friends and family work on their resume and prepare for their interviews. And when I've worked in like supervisory roles, I've helped people who worked with me who are also looking for improving or building on their career in any way. And I feel like this is just something useful. And the main reason I want to talk to you about this is because I've noticed something. I worked as an academic advisor as well and a guidance counselor too. And one of the things that I noticed is that when people who are very skilled, they've done so many things, so many projects, they are incredibly competent. But when they come up to that moment of writing their resume or they're called for an interview, they completely freeze and blank out and think that they have no skills. They think they've done no projects to fit in any of the things listed on the job description. And they feel imposter syndrome and all of the things. And they think they have nothing going on for them all of a sudden. And you're like, whoa, just take a moment. Like, let's sit down and actually go through the points of the things you have done in your life. If it's your first job, for example, we can go through some of your volunteer experience and your courses that you've taken, some things, but it would really be useful if you yourself were keeping track of these things before you get to that panic moment. But again, this is 100% just for you. No one else is supposed to look at this. You don't bring this to your interview, okay? This is just for you. To me, a career journal is an expanded version of your resume or CV. But it includes more than just what you've done or your achievements. It includes a little bit of the day by day. It includes smaller projects. It includes your feelings as well. Like, these are very important as you go through life. You'll find out that how somebody's made you feel during an interview is actually very reflective of the future environment in that workplace that you will be encountering in the future if you do get the job. So keeping track of all of these things in your notebook, I think, is very important. And also to keep track of your accomplishments that are little goals that lead to that dream job that you do want. And I give you examples from mine. I am a rare book librarian. It is something I've always wanted to do. There are also different types of rare book librarians. Like, for example, one of my strengths is public outreach, whereas somebody else, like one of my coworkers, is very academic based and likes to write scholarly articles about rare books. And those are very different skills. And it's something that we've both built on as we went through life, right? Before you even apply to other jobs, as you apply, keep an Excel document first of all the jobs you've actually applied for. Because many times people think that they've applied for a job because they've read the job description, and you think, oh, okay, like I saw it, therefore I applied for it. Like, it's a weird psychological thing. But actually write down in an Excel when you've actually submitted your resume and cover letter to that job, and keep track of them and keep track of what the job description was or the title, because if you do get a phone screening interview, you don't want to be like, what did I apply for? Like, what was the job for that place? It's very useful. And then you can color coordinate these if you've gotten an interview, if you've gotten a second interview, if you talk to somebody at all, or if you've never heard from them. Like, it's really helpful to kind of keep track at least of all that. Having a visual of how many jobs you applied for and how many interviews you got, you can also figure out percentages. Like, for me, I found out that there's a 10% interview rate for how many jobs I apply. So if I apply for 10 jobs, I'll get 1 interview. See the ratios for yourself. Now, big achievements are important. Obviously, if you got an award, if you've done a big project, all those are very important. But as you go through week by week, every week you'll probably do one task that has some skills attached to it. So if you had to do a document mock-up or something, or work the slab, or whatever the job you have is. Maybe for 1 week, just write one line in your career journal. Like, I did this project, it involved public outreach, communication, writing skills. Just write those in brackets, like transferable skills that could be used in the future for something else, just so you can track a few examples for when the interviews do come up, so that you have a collection of things that fit into a specific skill. And a lot of people kind of overlook these smaller little tasks, but they're so important because they build up and they add up to what is eventually your day by day or your career, because that's what you're doing with your time. If you do have visuals, I would recommend to add them in there too. Like, okay, so I'll give you an example for me. When I was a student, I got to do an exhibit, and it was an exhibit of rare books, and I took a picture because it helped me visually remember what it was like, and I wrote down, the experience of it. Who did I work with on this project? Could they be a potential connection? Could they be a potential reference? Was there any money involved, like a scholarship? I put all of the things related to that project, both skills, items involved, finances and budgeting involved, any kind of connection I could have for the future from that one project. So I would recommend keeping track of things like this as well, especially when you're a student, because you haven't had your full-on real job yet for the beginning. So you want to keep track of courses you've taken that lead up to that particular kind of job you want or you're applying for. Also, things you've done extracurricularly. Now, this is my chart from when I was a student. So over here, I kept track of every single course that I've taken that leads up to rare book librarianship. And then I put which project I've done for that course that involved rare books. And then on the other side, I put which rare book library did I go to and what items did I retrieve. And keeping track of all this made me realize like how many libraries I've been in touch with, how many people I've spoken to. Could I reach out to any one of them for a future project or for a reference? It really keeps things in perspective, and it builds up on your confidence in yourself and in your skills. And the other one I've written down is libraries and exhibitions that I've visited around the world, like as a tourist. And I know that this might feel irrelevant, but it helps to know that you've seen certain collections or certain things around the world that pertain to that job that you've done. Like maybe you've explored specific caves and you're a geologist of some, like it might not have to be directly related to what you're doing in a very scientific way, but it's part of the lore of your future career. So you want to add that in there because it might become important later on. So just put it in your journal. Like, why not? It's very helpful. And if your job is like, let's say it's very, very boring. Like, I have a friend who's a nighttime security guard, and he always tells me like, it's very boring, but I have to stay awake. There's a lot of lagging time, dead time, but I also have to be alert. We have our little routines. And for this, I say keep track of little happy moments, whatever they are. Like maybe you've listened to a song, maybe you've helped somebody at that job. Like maybe some kid was lost and you helped them find their parents. Or maybe someone said thank you to you because you helped them with something very little. Keep those little interactions in a notebook because it helps your morale, it helps your self-esteem, and it helps to know that you are making a contribution, no matter how small it is, to somebody somewhere. Maybe you made somebody feel safe that night. Maybe you wrote a poem. I don't know. Like, it doesn't have to be over the top academic achievements or CEO level type of things in a company. Little things in like contemporary jobs help a long way, especially in a kind of gig economy where people take multiple jobs that are not necessarily traditional career from the past, and jotting down these tiny beautiful moments that help you will kind of also add to your people skills as well when you look for future answers to interviews. And we will get to the interview because that's a big portion of this. One of the things I decided is every time I did anything at all for professional development, like if I joined the membership like the Ontario Library Association, or a Friends of a Library program. I jotted down when I joined it, who did I talk to, how much did it cost, if I won a scholarship or anything like that, any classes that I've taken outside of work or part-time or in the evenings. I put that all in there to keep track of some of the things that I've been doing, because it's very easy to overlook little things when you get to that final moment of the interview. Brings us to the interviews, and this is something you also want to keep track of. So definitely keep track in an Excel or something outside just what you've applied for, like I mentioned. But now you're coming up against the interview, and at the beginning, you might be very rusty. You might not know what you're doing. You might not have any questions to prepare with, because sometimes when you go on Glassdoor or specific places, they have some interview questions there, but they're never related to your exact job, right? So what I've done over the years is every single time I walked out of an interview, I immediately wrote down all of the questions I remembered. If I remembered anything at all from the interview, I wrote down as fast as I could so that they don't go anywhere, and I can keep them to prepare for the next one in the future. So keep as many as you can in your journal when you prepare, and if you do research on the internet, keep some of them down. But it helps if when you actually go to your own real life interview, you keep track of some of these questions for the future. And try to capture the entire interview in terms of feelings. I know this is gonna sound very cheesy. The way that people make you feel during the interview usually is a reflection a little bit of how it's going to go moving forward. And this includes the entire experience. Were people rude to you during the interview? Did they completely ignore you? Did they make you wait by the door like half an hour longer than when the interview was scheduled? Were people nice? Did they refuse to answer your questions when you had some for them? Were they evasive? Did they use certain kind of words that make you add a question mark in your brain? You need to keep track of these feelings and little intuitions for yourself, because you're an important person too. Cannot believe that I have to keep repeating this, but like, you matter as well. It should feel like it's a privilege to have you working for them. They need to value you from the beginning as well. And it's, you need to write that down, how they made you feel. And also keep track if you got the job or didn't get the job, or if you got a job offer and turned it down, or, if they called you for a second or third interview, and what was it like? What was the experience like? Did they accommodate if you needed accommodations of any kind? What did the culture feel like if you got a tour? Did people seem stressed out of their minds? Was someone crying in a corner somewhere? Like, kind of be aware of what the vibe was like in the place, because it's an indicator for you going forward. And write it down in your notebook. Keep track. Always keep track of who you interacted with as well. If you have names, like I always keep track of the names of the people who interviewed me for the future. And sometimes it's useful if you find out that someone was particularly nice and kind, and you meet them in a future place, you can say, hey, I remember you were being very kind to me. Thank you for that. And the opposite, of course. You don't have to say anything if they're rude, but you can avoid them at least. Now, in the career notebook, I also keep track. I have a list of just names. So people who can be potential future references, numbers of people, but also if I've worked on a project that there's a contact for a very particular thing that I might not be able to reach in any other context. Like maybe let's say it's a specific bookbinder or a specific marketing person or whatever. Just write down the contact, the number for the future in case you might need it. And lastly, any course you take that is career building or strengthening in any way, whether it's a leadership type of extracurricular course or something to do with your particular topic, I put down notes from those courses in here as well. I try not to over litter this notebook with those little notes because I don't want it to be full. Like I want this to be kind of a lifelong notebook. I don't want it to get too full. So what I've done is I start from the beginning, and these few pages are the actual jobs that I've had and what I've done in them, and the projects and the little sub projects and the experience. And then at the back, starting from the back, I did all of the interviews I've had and the second interviews, and if I had a job offer or not, and how people made me feel. And then somewhere in the middle there's some contacts, but there's a lot of empty space in here. And sometimes I put some notes from courses that I've taken that are valuable, but I try not to make it like insignificant points, if you know what I mean. Like, you want to keep this to help you. You don't want to be scavenging all over it, like trying to find the thing. You want it to be pretty clear and straightforward, so that when you are preparing for your interview, or you are preparing for that phone screening, or for writing your new resume, you have the points already laid out, you have the skills highlighted, you have the contacts there. Everything's in here, and you don't need to panic, you don't need to freak out. And obviously keep track of all the jobs you had, and in each one, those skills that you have that are transferable can match any job, even if it's different from what you've done in the past. It doesn't necessarily all have to lead to one thing, because a lot of people experiment early on. You have to try new things, see if you like them. I just cannot emphasize how important this has been in my life. I think everyone would benefit from keeping something like this, and I wish I had kept it since much earlier. I wish I kept this since like high school. Thank you for watching if you've made it this far. I hope this was useful to at least one person. See you in my next video.